Say this before you even touch the ticket. Not after you buy it. Not after you scratch it. Not after you look at the numbers and let your heart rise and fall like a leaf in the wind. Before you touch it at all. Because the moment you lay your hand upon that little slip of paper, you have already entered a state, and the state you enter is what determines what follows. Not the paper, not the printing, not the drawing, not the so-called odds. The state. Most people approach it like a beggar approaches a locked gate. They whisper, maybe this time, while deep within they are already preparing for disappointment. They have practiced disappointment for so long that it has become their nature. And nature, my friend, is always expressed. But I am not here to teach you hope. Hope is a confession that you do not possess what you desire. Hope is always tomorrow. Hope is always not yet. I am here to teach you law, and law does not ask whether you like it. Law does not ask whether you believe it. Law simply operates, and it operates with perfect fidelity. There are 3 words, and if you will dare to accept them rightly, if you will dare to feel what they imply, then you will discover that the world around you must reorganize itself to reflect what you have assumed within yourself. 3 words, not as superstition, not as a charm, not as something you rattle off in fear, but as a declaration of being. And you will say them before you touch the ticket, before the old habit rises, before the old inner voice begins its familiar sermon. It never works for me. I never win. It would be too good to be true. Because that inner voice is not commentary. It is prayer. And prayer is not what you say with your lips to impress the world. Prayer is what you accept as true in the secrecy of your own mind. Now, you may have come to this with thoughts of money, and I do not condemn that. Men desire freedom, and they imagine money is the symbol of that freedom. They desire relief from pressure, and they imagine a sudden windfall as the doorway. Very well, desire what you will. The law is no respecter of persons, but I must tell you from the beginning, this is not about money, and it is not about numbers. It is about the one who holds the ticket. The lottery is not played outside of you. It is played within you, and it is won before you ever see a single result. That is the part most men cannot accept, because they have been trained to bow before appearances. They have been trained to worship the outer world as though it were cause. They look at what has happened in the past and call it destiny. They look at what is printed on paper and call it power. They look at chance and call it ruler. And then they wonder why life toys with them. But I tell you, there is no luck. There is no chance. There is only law. And what men call luck is only the name the ignorant give to the operation of the law. They do not understand. If you stay with me, you will understand why your past tickets did not fail. They were never the cause. They were the mirror. They were showing you something, pointing you back to the only power you have ever had, and the only power you will ever need. The power of consciousness, the power of imagination. You may not like hearing that. You may want me to tell you the secret number, the perfect day, the best method, the clever way to beat the system. But I cannot teach you tricks. I teach principle. I teach the one thing that, once grasped, makes every system irrelevant. Because when you change the state within, the world without must change to match it. And that is not poetry. That is not religion. That is law. Now, I know you have bought tickets before. You held them in your hand. You stared at them. You felt that familiar mixture of hope and dread. You imagined winning for a moment, and then you quickly pulled back, as though your own desire were dangerous, and perhaps you did not speak it aloud. But inwardly, you said something like this: it probably won't happen. People like me don't win. Then, when the result came, you called it proof. You said, see, I knew it. But you did not see what really happened. You were not predicting the world. You were commanding it. For the world is yourself pushed out. The outer is only the echo of the inner. And the inner, my friend, is always speaking. You are always whispering something within yourself. Even when you think you are silent, you are not silent. Even when you think you are merely being realistic, you are praying. So let us begin here, at the very start, where everything is decided. Before the hand touches the ticket, the mind touches a state. Before the eyes read numbers, the heart reads itself. Before the paper is scratched, consciousness has already impressed its decree upon the deeper self. Now I want you to consider something with me. Slowly, without rushing. When you approach the ticket, what is your assumption? Not what you say you want, but what you accept. Because the law does not bring you what you want, it brings you what you are conscious of being. If you approach as one who believes life is against him, you have already entered the state of defeat. And the outer world, faithful, mechanical, obedient, will reflect defeat in 1,000 ways. Not because it hates you, but because it cannot do otherwise. But if you approach as one who has already received, you have entered a different state. And then the outer world must reorganize itself through ways you cannot see, through channels you cannot plan, through events that seem ordinary and yet are perfectly arranged, to bring your outer experience into harmony with the inner assumption. Now hear me. I am not asking you to strain. I am not asking you to fight your mind. I am not asking you to whip yourself into excitement, to force emotion, to pretend with a nervous smile. I am asking you to do something far simpler and far deeper. I am asking you to accept a state as true, to accept the end as present, to occupy the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not as a possibility, but as a fact, because creation is finished. The end already exists, and your only task is to select by assumption which end you will experience. That is the law of assumption. Now let us return to those 3 words I promised you. I will not unveil them yet, not fully, not in their complete meaning, because if I give you the words without preparing you to understand what words truly are, you will repeat them like a parrot and wonder why nothing changes. Words spoken without feeling are empty. Words spoken as a ritual, while the heart contradicts them, do nothing. But words spoken from a state, words spoken with the authority of being, move worlds. So I will give you a promise at the outset, and I want you to hold it like a candle in your mind. There are 3 words. You will say them before you touch the ticket. And if you say them from the right state, if you accept what they imply, then the world must reorganize itself to reflect it. Not because the world is kind, not because chance finally smiles, but because the law is faithful. Now perhaps you are already resisting. Perhaps you are saying yes, but the odds, and I tell you again, gently but firmly, the odds are not the cause. The odds are the shadow. The odds are the name men give to the patterns they observe when they do not understand consciousness. When you change the cause, the patterns change. Do you think it is the ticket that wins? Do you think paper has power? Do you think ink decides? No, it is consciousness. The ticket is only the stage on which your state is displayed. One man takes the ticket as a game and carries the feeling of maybe. He scratches it while preparing to lose. He reads it with a heart that already expects disappointment, and he calls it chance. Another man takes the ticket as confirmation, not because he is foolish, not because he is deluded, but because he has moved into the state of the wish fulfilled. He is not trying to win, he is assuming he has already won, and the ticket in time must conform, because the world is a mirror. Do you see the difference? One is outside, waiting. The other is inside, being. That is why I say the lottery is not played outside. It is played within, and it is won before anything appears. Now I want to speak to the part of you that has been disappointed, because if you do not understand disappointment, you will keep repeating it in new forms. Disappointment is not merely a feeling you have after you lose. Disappointment is a state you enter before you begin. It is the inner rehearsal of loss. It is the quiet acceptance that life does not favor you. It is the hidden conversation that says, I am the sort who doesn't get what he wants. And then, when the outer world echoes that conversation, you call it reality. But reality is not what you see. Reality is what you are. The seen is only the outpicturing of the unseen. So if you would change the seen, you must change the unseen. And this, my friend, is the real reason your past tickets did not work. Not because you were cursed, not because you were unlucky, not because life is cruel, but because you were being shown again and again that the outer does not create the inner. The inner creates the outer. Every loss was pointing you back. Every disappointment was saying, look within. Every failed ticket was whispering, you are treating me as cause, but I am only effect. And if you can receive that without bitterness, if you can receive it as instruction rather than punishment, then you are already free. Now I will make a declaration to you, and I want you to test it not with argument, but with observation. You do not get what you want. You get what you accept. You get what you consent to be. You get what you repeatedly occupy as your state. And the outer world, this whole drama of events and circumstances, cannot help but play its part. So I am not here to encourage you to chase tickets or to live your life at the mercy of a drawing. The ticket is only a symbol, a convenient mirror. The real teaching is this: you are always declaring, always assuming, always impressing the subconscious with a state. And the subconscious, being the womb of creation, gives it form. Now, if you understand that, then you will understand why the first moment, those first words before you touch the ticket, matter more than anything else. Because in that moment you decide what you are, not what you desire. What you are, and what you are, the world will show you. So we begin with a slow, solemn movement, almost like scripture, because it must sink beneath the surface mind. Your surface mind has been trained to argue. It has been trained to measure. It has been trained to ask how and why and what are the chances. But the subconscious does not ask such questions. The subconscious accepts. So we speak to the level that accepts. We speak to the level that creates. We speak to the level that says, Amen. Now let me draw you into a simple picture. Imagine a man standing at a counter, purchasing a ticket. Two men could stand there, side by side, buying the same thing. Outwardly they look identical. They hand over the same coin. They receive the same paper. They walk away into the same street. And yet inwardly, they are in different worlds. One walks away with a sigh, thinking, it's a waste, but I'll try. That is a state. It is the state of lack, of skepticism, of resignation. The other walks away quietly, not shouting, not boasting, not trying to convince anyone, but inwardly he has already accepted fulfillment. He feels a strange certainty, not nervous, not frantic, certain. And in his mind, the ticket is not a question mark. It is an answered prayer. Do you see it? The difference is invisible, and yet it is everything, because the outer world will echo the invisible. This is what men do not understand. They look at results, and they think results are produced by outer causes. But results are produced by inner states. So before you touch the ticket, you must touch the state. You must enter the end. You must become inwardly the one who has already received. Now I know the mind will protest again, but what if I'm wrong? Do you see what that question reveals? It reveals that you are still outside, trying to predict. But the law is not prediction, it is creation. You do not predict what will happen, you decide what you are, and then you persist in it until it becomes natural. Now that word natural is important, and we will come to it later, but I want you to hear it now like a bell in the distance. When a state becomes natural, it must objectify itself, because the subconscious only externalizes what feels natural. So the task at the beginning is not to convince the world. It is to shift what feels natural within you. And you do that by assuming the end. Now, here is the intrigue I promised you. If you remain with me, you will understand why you have not failed. You have been practicing a law without knowing it. You have been using the creative name without understanding its meaning. You have been praying all day long with your inner speech, and the world has been answering you with perfect obedience. And that is the secret. The world has never been against you. It has been agreeing with you. It has been saying yes to your hidden assumptions. It has been reflecting what you have accepted. So if you would change your experience, you must change what you accept. And that begins in this first block with a slow and solemn recognition. There is no luck. There is no chance. There is only law. And the law is this: your assumption, if persisted in, hardens into fact. Now, if that is true, and it is, then what you do before you touch the ticket is more important than what you do after you touch it. Because after you touch it, the mind often reacts. It rises and falls. It hopes and fears. It waits and doubts. It looks for signs. It interprets. It compares. It panics. It celebrates prematurely and collapses quickly. That is the old man, the old state, the old habit. But before you touch it, there is stillness. There is the moment of choice. There is the chance, if I may use that word in its true meaning. Not the chance of winning, but the chance of choosing a new state. So I invite you into that moment, now. Not at a counter, not in a shop, not with paper in your hand, but here, inwardly, where all creation begins. Close your eyes for a moment if you can, not as a ritual, but as a withdrawal from appearances, and ask yourself, what is my habitual inner claim? What do I usually feel when I approach something I desire? Do I feel hope mixed with dread? Do I feel unworthiness? Do I feel suspicion toward life? Do I feel like an outsider looking in? If so, do not condemn yourself. Condemnation is only another state, and it produces only more of itself. Simply observe, and then, gently, choose again. Choose to occupy the feeling you would have if it were already done. Not a frantic excitement, not a forced happiness, but the simple relief of fulfillment, the quiet ease of having received, the calm that follows certainty. And in that calm, you will speak those 3 words before you touch the ticket. You will not speak them as a bargain with God. You will speak them as the name of God. You will not speak them as one pleading with the universe. You will speak them as the one who creates the universe you experience. And then, whatever the world has called odds must bow to the state you have assumed, because the world cannot do otherwise. Now you may be thinking, this sounds too absolute. Yes, it is absolute, because law is absolute. Gravity does not compromise. It does not say, well, for this man we will let the stone float. No, if you drop it, it falls. So it is with this law. If you assume defeat, defeat is expressed. If you assume fulfillment, fulfillment is expressed. And the only reason men call it unreliable is because they assume one thing in a quiet moment and then spend the rest of the day assuming its opposite. They plant and uproot. They bless and curse. They say, I am the winner. And then an hour later they say, I never win. And they do not see that the second decree cancels the first. But we will come to that discipline later. For now, I want you to feel the authority of the beginning. This is not a game outside of you. It is a game of consciousness. And consciousness always wins, because consciousness is the only player. So stay with me, long enough to see why your past experiences were not punishment, but instruction. Stay with me long enough to discover the inner act that precedes every outer result. Stay with me long enough to understand why you are not here to beg life for favor, but to claim inwardly what you choose to be. And when you are ready, before you touch the ticket, you will say the 3 words in the only way they have power from the end. And then you will watch calmly as life rearranges itself to reflect what you have assumed. Not because life has moods, not because fate finally smiles, but because the law is faithful and you at last have learned how to use it. Now let us take a hammer to this idol men have built and then bowed before all their lives. They have given it a name to make it sound respectable. They call it luck, they call it chance, they call it odds, as though by giving the mystery a number they have explained it. But what they have truly done is this: they have hidden from themselves the cause of their own experience, and then they have trembled before the effect. Luck is not a power. Luck is a label. It is the name the ignorant give to the law when they do not know the law is operating. And because they do not know, they continue to live as though life were a cruel dice game, as though fortune were a lady who sometimes smiles and sometimes turns away, as though a man were born stamped favored and another stamped forgotten. I tell you plainly, there is no such stamp. There is no such decree outside of you. There is only consciousness, and consciousness is always assuming something. That assumption, felt, accepted, persisted in, hardens into fact. And when men do not see the assumption at work, they look at the hardened fact and they call it luck. Now you have seen this in yourself more times than you can count, but you have not recognized it. You walk through the day carrying little inner conversations as naturally as you breathe, and those conversations become tomorrow's events. And because you do not hear yourself, because you do not watch what you are inwardly claiming, you think events come from without. You think they happen to you. You think you are at the mercy of the world. But the world is not doing anything to you. The world is showing you what you are doing within yourself. Let us speak of this so-called unlucky man, because he is not cursed. He is trained. He has rehearsed defeat until it has become familiar. He has practiced the feeling of it won't work until it feels normal. And what feels normal, the subconscious accepts as reality and projects as the world. That is why he appears to move from disappointment to disappointment as though pulled by an unseen chain. You may say, but Neville, he truly has lost many times. Yes, and why? Because he has inwardly accepted losing as his story. He has made defeat his identity. He does not merely lose a ticket. He becomes the one who loses. Watch him, and you will learn something. He goes to buy a ticket. Outwardly, he acts like the hopeful man. He stands there, he pays, he receives it, and perhaps he even smiles. But inwardly, before his fingers even close around that paper, he is already whispering his true prayer. He looks at the ticket and thinks, this never works. He turns it over and thinks, people like me don't win. He holds it in his pocket and thinks, it would be too good to be true. And when he says these things quietly, inwardly, he believes he is being sensible. He believes he is protecting himself. He believes he is avoiding disappointment by expecting it first. But do you see the trap? By expecting it, he is accepting it. By accepting it, he is impressing it. By impressing it, he is creating it. And then, when the result appears, he says, I knew it. And he calls that knowledge wisdom. It is not wisdom. It is not wisdom. It is obedience to law. Now I want you to take this one sentence and let it become a knife that cuts through confusion. Prayer is not what you say with your lips. Prayer is what you accept as true. The subconscious does not care what you recite. It does not care what you wish. It responds to what you accept. You may stand in a room and speak beautiful words about wealth, about victory, about freedom. Yet, if inwardly you are accepting the feeling of not for me, you are praying for not for me, and the law being impersonal, being precise, will answer your prayer exactly. Men think prayer is begging. Men think prayer is pleading with a distant God. But the God of whom I speak is not distant. God is your own wonderful human imagination. God is your awareness of being. And prayer is simply the act of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So when a man approaches a ticket while inwardly accepting loss, he is praying for loss. He may not know it, but he is. And the outer world, being the mirror, reflects that prayer as a result. This is why I say the lottery is a mirror. It does not decide anything. It shows you what state you entered when you approached it. It reveals your assumption. It reveals your inner claim. It reveals what you have been accepting as true about yourself. Now the world will tell you, yes, but the odds are fixed. The numbers are random. And I tell you that randomness is only the appearance of law when the cause is unseen. You see patterns in the outer, and you call them probability. But you do not see the inner states that produced those outer patterns. So you imagine the outer is independent. The outer is never independent. The outer is dependent, always upon the inner. And this is the anchor I want to place in you, not as a pretty phrase, but as a principle you return to again and again until it becomes the way you think. The outer world is yourself pushed out. I will say it again, and I want you to hear it as the end of argument. The outer world is yourself pushed out. Now, if that is true, and it is, then the question is not, what are the odds? The question is, what am I assuming? Not what am I hoping, not what am I wishing, but what am I assuming? What am I accepting as true right now, beneath the surface, in the hidden chamber of my being? This is why two men can buy the same ticket and have entirely different experiences, and the world will call one lucky and the other unlucky, when in truth one entered the state of fulfillment, and the other entered the state of defeat. Now I want to speak directly to your inner speech, because it is the secret engine behind everything you call chance. When you buy the ticket, do you look at it and inwardly say, come on, please? That is still outside. That is still begging. That is still confessing that the thing is not yours. Do you look at it and inwardly say, it probably won't happen? That is a decree of loss. Do you look at it and inwardly say, I never win. That is not merely an opinion. That is an I am in disguise. Because every time you claim something about yourself, you are using the creative name. You are defining your being. You are speaking as the operant power. So let us bring the two words. You must learn to respect I am. They are not mere grammar. They are not casual. They are not harmless. They are the name of God, and what you place after them becomes your world. The man who says, I am unlucky, may not always speak it aloud, but he feels it. He implies it in his tone. He implies it in his jokes. He implies it in his sighs. And the subconscious takes the implication as fact. You must understand, the subconscious does not reason. It does not weigh evidence. It does not debate. It accepts. And it accepts what you feel to be true. So a man may say with his lips, I hope I win, while with his feeling, he is saying, I am a loser. And the feeling is what is accepted. Therefore, when you hear me speak of assumption, do not make it a complicated thing. Assumption is simply the state you occupy. It is the feeling of being the sort of man who wins or the sort of man who loses. It is the inner atmosphere you live in, often without noticing, and the lottery, because it is dramatic, because it is clear, because it seems so external, becomes a perfect mirror to show you what you have been doing inwardly all along. Now I will give you a simple everyday scene, not to entertain you, but to expose this habit. A man buys a ticket and walks home. He sits at a table. Before he even checks anything, he already feels tension. He already feels the old story rising. He tells himself, don't get your hopes up. He says it as though it were wisdom. But what is he really doing? He is assuming disappointment. He is accepting disappointment as the safe, familiar place. Then he looks at the ticket. He imagines winning for a second, and immediately he cuts it off. He says, no, don't be ridiculous. And in that moment, he has rejected his own desire. He has rejected the end. He has returned to the state of lack. And then, when the outcome matches the state, he says, see, I told you. Yes, you told yourself. And the world agreed. Now I am going to say something that may sound harsh, but it will free you if you accept it. The world is not punishing you. The world is obeying you. The world is not mocking you. The world is mirroring you. If you have called yourself unlucky, whether in words, in tone, in feeling, then the law has simply said, so be it. Not because it hates you, but because it is law. So we must destroy this myth at its root. Luck is not a cause. Luck is an effect interpreted by the blind. Odds are not a ruler. Odds are a shadow. Numbers are not masters. Numbers are servants. And the master is the state you occupy. Now you may ask, but how can a state affect something like a drawing? My friend, you do not yet see how little you understand about causation. You assume causation is only physical. You assume the only causes are the things you can touch. But the greatest cause is consciousness, and the physical is the last thing to appear. If you can accept that your mood changes what you notice, what you say, how you act, whom you meet, what you choose, and therefore changes the chain of events that unfolds. If you can accept that even in ordinary life, then you can begin to understand the deeper truth. Consciousness is the only reality, and the world is its projection. Now, do not let your mind run away into arguments. That is not the purpose here. The purpose is to make you aware of your inner rehearsal, because the unlucky man is always rehearsing defeat. He rehearses it when he tells the old story again. It never works for me. He rehearses it when he watches someone else succeed and thinks, must be nice. He rehearses it when he makes a joke. With my luck, he rehearses it when he buys the ticket with a shrug, as though his desire were foolish. And then he wonders why the mirror shows him what he has rehearsed. So the destruction of the myth begins with one discipline. Catch the rehearsal. Catch the inner sentence before it finishes. Catch the old tone before it settles. Catch the assumption before it becomes automatic. And then replace it, not by strain, not by force, but by a new acceptance. This is where the words I am must enter strongly, not as a slogan, but as your chosen identity. For you cannot serve two masters. You cannot habitually accept I am unlucky and expect the world to reflect I am favored. The subconscious accepts what you consistently occupy, what you repeatedly return to, what you make natural. So our anchor returns again, and it will return throughout this entire work until you can feel its truth without effort. The outer world is yourself pushed out. Say it inwardly when the old myth rises. Say it when you are tempted to blame chance. Say it when you are tempted to worship numbers. Say it when you are tempted to call yourself unlucky. And then ask the only question worth asking. What am I assuming? Now I will take you one step deeper. Men believe they are unlucky because they see a chain of outcomes, and they imagine the chain is independent of them. But what they do not see is the chain of inner acceptance that preceded the outcomes. The inner act always comes first. A man accepts himself as forgotten, and then life seems to forget him. A man accepts himself as unsupported, and then circumstances echo unsupportedness. A man accepts himself as unlucky, and then outcomes arrange themselves to confirm the identity. And the tragedy is that once the identity is confirmed a few times, he calls it proof, and he tightens his grip on it. He says, "See, it's just the way it is." And because he says that, it remains the way it is. But the moment you see it as assumption, you are no longer a prisoner. You are an operator. You can choose again. You can assume again. You can accept a new identity. Now in these next movements, I will show you the law itself so clearly that the word luck will begin to sound childish to you, like a superstition from a darker age. You will see that what you have called odds is merely unconscious creation. But for now, let this section do its work. Let it demolish the false god. You are not at the mercy of chance. You are not begging a universe for a favor. You are not waiting for luck to choose you. You are choosing a state, and the world will reflect it. The lottery is not a power outside of you. It is a mirror of what you are inside of you. And prayer is not what you say with your lips. Prayer is what you accept as true. So watch what you accept. Watch what you rehearse. Watch the inner words you call just thoughts, because those just thoughts are the very decrees by which tomorrow is formed. And if you will begin now quietly, steadily, without strain, to accept a different claim, to occupy a different state, then you will discover that the myth of luck collapses on its own, because the law will begin to reveal itself in your own experience, not as theory, not as philosophy, but as fact. The outer world is yourself pushed out, and what you assume, you become. Now that the false idol has been shattered, now that the word luck has begun to lose its hold over you, we may speak of the law itself, not as a theory, not as a belief you may accept or reject, but as an inevitability. For the law of assumption is not something you choose to believe in. It is something you are already using every moment of your life, whether you know it or not. I want you to hear this clearly, because here many misunderstand. The law of assumption is not a spiritual idea meant to comfort you. It is not a hopeful philosophy for difficult times. It is the principle by which consciousness operates. It is the way imagination creates reality, and you cannot step outside of it any more than you can step outside of your own awareness. Every moment, you are assuming something about yourself, about life, about what is possible for you. And that assumption, once accepted, once felt as natural, once lived in, becomes the framework through which the world must express itself. Now let us define assumption, not with cold words, but with living meaning. To assume is not to desire. To assume is not to hope. To assume is not to wait. To assume is to accept as true. Desire says, I want this. Waiting says, I do not have it yet. Hope says, perhaps someday. Assumption says, this is so. And the subconscious does not respond to desire. It does not respond to waiting. It does not respond to hope. It responds only to acceptance. It responds only to what you feel to be true. This is why so many struggle. They desire intensely. They hope fervently. They wait patiently. And yet nothing changes. Because in all three states, they are confessing absence. They are affirming that the thing they want is not theirs. But assumption is different. Assumption is quiet. Assumption is settled. Assumption is the feeling of this is mine, even when the senses deny it. And because it is settled, because it feels final, the subconscious accepts it as fact and begins its work of projection. Now I have often said, and I will say it again because it is vital, you understand it, that the subconscious mind is the womb of creation. It is not poetic language. It is literal truth. The conscious mind selects, the subconscious produces. The conscious mind chooses the idea, the subconscious gives it form. The conscious mind is the husband, the subconscious is the wife. The husband does not create the child. He impresses the idea. The wife receives it and brings it forth after its kind. So too with you. What you consciously assume as true, what you feel to be real, is impressed upon the subconscious. And once impressed, it must be born into your world. The subconscious does not argue. It does not analyze. It does not say, "Is this reasonable?" It accepts and obeys. If you impress it with the feeling of wealth, it brings forth wealth. If you impress it with the feeling of defeat, it brings forth defeat. If you impress it with the feeling of being chosen, it brings forth confirmation. And this is why I say the law is inevitable. You cannot stop it. You can only direct it. Now let us look carefully at the difference between the man who desires and the man who assumes. The man who desires wealth thinks of money as something outside of himself. He looks at the ticket and says, "I wish this would change my life." His attention is outward. His feeling is longing. His inner state is separation. The man who assumes wealth does not feel that separation. He does not feel himself reaching toward money. He feels money as an expression of who he is. He feels himself to be the kind of man to whom wealth comes naturally. His attention is inward. His feeling is ownership. The first man is waiting for life to change him. The second man has changed himself and waits for life to follow. This is not a difference in effort. It is a difference in identity. And identity is everything. Now let me take you to a story that many know, but few truly understand. I speak of the building, the large apartment house that a doctor and his wife desired. For years, they labored, they saved money, they made plans, they hoped, they desired, they waited, and nothing came of it. Why? Because all their effort was still rooted in the feeling of not having. They were good, honest people, but they were not assuming ownership. They were assuming struggle. Then they learned the law. They were told not to plan, not to worry about how, not to calculate. They were told to live in the end, to assume the building was already theirs. So what did they do? They did not say, "We will own an apartment house someday." They did not say, "We are trying to get a building." They began to imagine themselves walking through the halls of that building. They heard the sound of footsteps echoing in the corridors. They felt the pride of ownership. They accepted congratulations from friends. They felt the satisfaction of "it is done." They did this nightly, not with strain, not with desperation, but with acceptance. And what happened? Without their asking, a contractor drew plans. Without their seeking, financing appeared. Without their forcing, the building rose. They did not supply the money. The law supplied the means. The imaginal act preceded the physical fact. This is the law of assumption in action. Now consider my own journey to Barbados, not as a story to admire, but as a lesson to understand. I desired to go to Barbados. Outwardly, I had no money, no passage, no prospects. Every fact denied the possibility. But my teacher Abdullah said to me, "You are in Barbados." He did not say, "You will go." He did not say, "Try to believe." He said, "You are there." And I accepted that statement, not intellectually, but imaginatively. Each night, I lay in bed and assumed I was in my father's home in Barbados. I felt the tropical air. I heard familiar voices. I knew where I was. I did not imagine the journey. I did not imagine buying a ticket. I did not imagine saving money. I imagined the end. And because I assumed the end, the bridge of incidents appeared. A letter came. A passage was offered. I traveled without paying a cent. The world rearranged itself to reflect the assumption I had already accepted. Now understand this. The bridge was not my concern. The means were not my concern. My only task was to remain faithful to the assumption. This is why I say assumption is not belief. It is acceptance. It is the state you occupy. Now let us consider the ladder experiment, because it is simple, and simplicity often reveals truth more clearly than grandeur. I told students to imagine themselves climbing a ladder, to feel the rungs beneath their hands, to feel the strain in their arms, to feel the movement. I told them not to tell anyone, not to force action, just to imagine nightly. And then, in their waking life, they found themselves climbing ladders, repairing roofs, changing light bulbs, performing tasks that required ladders. Why? Because the assumption, impressed upon the subconscious, demanded expression. They did not desire to climb ladders. They assumed they were climbing, and the world complied. Now take this understanding and place it beside the lottery ticket. One man buys the ticket as a game. He feels curiosity, he feels doubt, he feels separation, he feels himself as an outsider, hoping for a miracle. Another man buys the ticket as a fact already decided. He feels calm. He feels ownership. He feels completion. He does not wait for permission from numbers. The first man treats the ticket as the cause. The second man knows the ticket is an effect. The first man says, let's see what happens. The second man says inwardly, this is what has happened. Do you see the difference? One lives in anticipation. The other lives in fulfillment. And the law responds only to fulfillment. Now this does not mean the second man feels excitement or arrogance. Quite the opposite. Fulfillment is often quiet. It is the absence of longing. It is the sense of course. And this is why assumption feels so different from desire. Desire is restless. Assumption is restful. Desire is tense. Assumption is settled. Desire is future. Assumption is present. Now I want you to understand something crucial. The law does not care what the assumption is. It cares only that it is assumed. If you assume loss, loss must follow. If you assume victory, victory must follow. If you assume it never works for me, then life must faithfully echo that statement. This is why I say the law is not moral. It does not judge. It does not reward or punish. It mirrors. And this is why it is useless to argue with circumstances. Circumstances are effects. They are the outpictured past assumptions. To fight the effect is to ignore the cause. To change the cause is to change the effect. Now let us bring this back gently but firmly to the ticket. The man who buys a ticket as a game is unconsciously confessing, I am not the one who decides. The man who buys a ticket as a fact is confessing, I am the operant power. One kneels before chance, the other stands in law. And the world always reflects the posture you take inwardly. So I ask you now, not to judge yourself, not to condemn past actions, but to observe when you have bought tickets in the past. Who were you being? Were you the hopeful one, the joking one, the doubtful one, the resigned one, or were you the fulfilled one? The answer to that question explains every outcome you have experienced. And here is the most important thing I will say in this section. You do not need more effort. You do not need more repetition. You do not need more belief. You need a new assumption. And assumption is not forced. It is accepted. It is chosen. It is lived in. In the next movement, I will show you why most fail even after hearing this. And it is not because the law does not work. It is because they speak the words without entering the state. But before we go there, let this settle in you. The law of assumption is operating now. It has always been operating. It will continue to operate. And the only question that matters is this. What are you assuming yourself to be? Now we come to the place where most turn back without ever knowing why. They hear the law. They nod in agreement. They repeat the phrases, and yet nothing in their world changes. And because nothing changes, they quietly conclude that the law does not work for them. But the law has never failed them. They have only misunderstood how it operates. This is the most common error of all. And it is so common because it feels like progress. A man learns a phrase. He repeats it. He feels he is doing something. He feels disciplined. He feels spiritual. And yet inwardly, nothing has shifted. The words move across his lips, but they do not descend into his being. I have seen this again and again. Men and women come to me and say, I have been affirming for months. I have said the words faithfully. I have repeated them every day. And when I ask them a single question, how did you feel when you said them? There is silence. For the truth is this, words alone do nothing. They are not creative by themselves. They are symbols. They are vessels. And unless they are filled with feeling, they are empty. The subconscious does not hear sound. It does not listen to language. It does not respond to grammar. It responds to feeling. Feeling is its native tongue. And whatever feeling accompanies a thought is what the subconscious accepts as truth. This is why a man may repeat, I am wealthy 1,000 times and remain poor, while another may feel wealthy once, deeply, quietly, and see his world change. The difference is not effort. The difference is feeling. Most affirmations fail because they are spoken from the wrong state. They are spoken from the state of wanting. They are spoken from the state of trying. They are spoken from the state of trying. They are spoken from the state of I am saying this because it is not true yet. And that feeling of not yet is what is impressed. Do you see the contradiction? A man says, I am rich, but he feels poor. A woman says, I am loved, but she feels alone. A man says, I am lucky, but he feels overlooked. And the subconscious, faithful and literal, does not accept the words. It accepts the feeling. And so it continues to produce poverty, loneliness, and disappointment. This is why repetition without conviction is useless. It is not repetition that impresses, it is acceptance. Think of a lie. A lie, repeated without belief, never convinces anyone. But a statement spoken once with absolute conviction can move a crowd. The subconscious is no different. It responds to certainty, not to noise. Now let me show you how this error appears in daily life, not in grand moments, but in ordinary, unnoticed ones. A man says his affirmation in the morning, he feels hopeful for a moment. Then he opens his mail and sighs, bills again. That sigh carries more creative power than the affirmation, because it is felt. A woman declares abundance, then later tells a friend, money is always a struggle. She laughs as she says it, thinking it harmless. But the subconscious does not hear laughter. It hears acceptance. A man repeats words of confidence, then mutters under his breath, I always mess things up. That mutter is prayer. These inner dialogues are not neutral. They are not meaningless. They are the constant stream of assumptions flowing into the subconscious, shaping tomorrow's events. And this is why I say to you, the most dangerous conversations are the ones you do not notice. The casual remarks, the jokes, the sighs, the silent conclusions you draw about yourself. You may speak a powerful phrase for 5 minutes, and then undo it in 5 seconds of inner complaint. Now, I want to introduce something gently here, without naming it yet, without turning it into a formula. There are 3 words that men speak constantly, often without awareness, often against themselves. These 3 words are the most powerful words you will ever utter, and most people use them to bind themselves. But I will not reveal them yet. I want you first to recognize how often you speak without feeling, how often you contradict yourself, how often you say words while inwardly accepting their opposite. Because until you see this, you will think the problem is effort. You will think you need stronger will, more discipline, more repetition. And that is not the case. The problem is alignment. Words must match feeling. Feeling must match identity. And identity must be chosen deliberately. Now let us look again at the lottery ticket, because it is such a clear stage upon which this error plays out. A man holds the ticket and says, this is my winning ticket. But inside, he feels nervous. He feels doubt. He feels embarrassment for even thinking such a thing. That embarrassment is the prayer. That doubt is the assumption. The words are ignored. Another man says nothing aloud. He simply feels calm. He feels settled. He feels as though the outcome is already known. That calm is acceptance. That calm is conviction, and the law responds to that calm. The difference is not volume. It is not enthusiasm. It is not excitement. It is feeling. This is why excitement often fades and leaves nothing behind. Excitement is not the same as conviction. Excitement is future-oriented. Conviction is present. Now I want you to be very honest with yourself, not to judge, but to recognize. When you have said affirmations in the past, were you feeling relief or strain? Were you feeling ownership or hope? Were you feeling calm or tension? If you were straining, you were confessing that the thing was not yours. If you were trying to believe, you were confessing disbelief. The law does not respond to trying. It responds to being. And this is why the subconscious ignores empty affirmations. It is not stubborn. It is not cruel. It is faithful. It reflects exactly what you feel to be true. Now there is another subtle form of this error that I must expose, because many fall into it without realizing it. They say the words correctly. They even feel something while saying them, but they do not sustain the state. They speak the words for a moment, and then return immediately to the old identity. It is like stepping into a warm room, and then walking straight back into the cold. The warmth cannot change you if you refuse to remain in it. An assumption is not a momentary act. It is a state you dwell in, And if you visit it briefly, but live elsewhere, the place you live in will dominate. So I tell you plainly, do not measure your progress by how often you say the words. Measure it by how often you return to the feeling. Do not ask, how many times did I affirm today? Ask instead, who was I being today? Now let us bring this inward where it belongs. Listen to your own inner dialogue. Listen not to what you say publicly, but to what you say privately. I always struggle. I'm not the lucky type. It never works for me. I don't get those kinds of breaks. These are not observations. These are declarations. These are assumptions. These are identities being reinforced, and each one of them quietly undoes any conscious affirmation you may be making. This is why I say the error is not ignorance of the law. Many know the law intellectually. The error is unconscious contradiction. And until you stop contradicting yourself, no technique, no phrase, no ritual will help you. Now do not be discouraged by this. Be relieved, because this means the solution is simple, not easy at first, but simple. The solution is not more words. The solution is more awareness. Awareness of feeling, awareness of inner speech, awareness of what you are accepting as true about yourself. In the next movement, I will take you into the heart of the matter. I will show you why feeling is the secret, not as a slogan, not as a technique, but as the very mechanism of creation itself, and only then will those three words be ready to be understood, not as sounds but as identity. For now, let this truth settle gently but firmly within you. The subconscious does not listen to what you say. It listens to what you feel. And whatever you feel to be true, you are creating, whether you intend to or not. I will go on, but I must be honest with you about one thing before I deepen this. Nothing I say changes the mathematical odds of a lottery drawing. The numbers on the board are what they are. What changes is you, your state of consciousness, your inner acceptance, your habitual feeling of life. And when you change that, your world changes in ways that often look to the crowd like chance, luck, or coincidence. But I do not teach superstition. I teach the law of consciousness. Now, having said that plainly, let us come to the core. Feeling is the secret. Not because it is a pleasing phrase, but because feeling is the only language the subconscious understands. You may speak to it in words until your voice grows tired, and it will remain unmoved if your feeling contradicts your words. But let a single imaginal act be felt as true, even for a moment, and the subconscious receives it like seed into fertile soil. The conscious mind is forever choosing, comparing, judging, arguing. It lives in the world of how and when, and is this reasonable? But the subconscious does not debate. It does not weigh probabilities. It does not consult the evidence of the senses as final authority. It simply accepts what you feel to be true, and then it expresses that acceptance as the conditions and events of your life. So when I say feeling is the secret, I mean this. The subconscious cannot be impressed by your effort, only by your acceptance. And acceptance is always a feeling. It may be quiet, it may be gentle, it may even seem ordinary, but it is always a mood, a tone, an inward certainty. Many confuse forced emotion with feeling. They think they must work themselves into excitement, as though shouting inwardly will persuade the depths. But forced emotion is strain, and strain is the confession that you do not yet have it. Strain is the feeling of distance. Strain says, I must push this into being, and that very push declares that it is not natural to you. Natural feeling is entirely different. Natural feeling is the mood of ownership. It is the inward, of course. It is the inward, of course. It is the calm sense that the thing is already so. It may not be loud, it may not be dramatic, but it is real. And what is real to you inwardly will become real to you outwardly. Think of your own name. When someone speaks it, you do not become excited. You do not strain to believe it. You accept it effortlessly, because it is natural. That is the quality of feeling you seek, not hysteria, not frenzy, but the simple settled acceptance of the wish fulfilled. This is why one affirmation felt once is worth more than 1,000 repetitions spoken from doubt. The repeated words may satisfy the conscious mind's desire to do something, but the subconscious is moved only by the state you enter, the mood you occupy, the feeling you wear. I have watched men repeat noble phrases while living in the mood of failure. They say, I am successful, and then they go about their day with the feeling of being a man who never succeeds. They say, I am loved, and they carry themselves with the inward posture of someone bracing for rejection. They say, I am abundant, and they feel scarcity in every transaction, in every bill, in every small purchase, and they wonder why nothing changes. Nothing changes, because the words were not the cause. The feeling was the cause. The words were only noise around the cause. Now let me give you simple illustrations, not to entertain you, but to reveal yourself to yourself. A woman once came to me longing for love. She had repeated affirmations faithfully. She told me she had said, day after day, I am cherished, I am wanted, I am chosen. Yet she remained alone, and each passing month hardened her disappointment. I asked her gently, when you said those words, what did you feel? And she admitted she felt a kind of aching, a kind of pleading, a kind of emptiness behind every sentence. Do you see? Her lips spoke love, but her feeling was longing. Her subconscious accepted longing and produced more occasions for longing. I asked her to do something simple. I asked her, each night as she lay drowsy, to imagine a short scene that would be true if she were already loved. Not a long drama, just a single little act. I suggested she feel the weight of a hand in hers. Hear a voice say, I'm so glad you're here. Feel the quiet safety of belonging. And then, this is the key, accept that feeling as though it were happening now, not tomorrow, not someday. Now, within weeks, her entire mood changed. She stopped walking through the day, searching. She began walking as one who is already loved. Her face softened, her manner changed, and the world which is only yourself pushed out, responded. Relationship came in the most natural way, through ordinary circumstances, without strain or chasing. The crowd would call it chance, but it was not chance. It was the outpicturing of a new feeling. Another man came to me, burdened by money. He was not lazy. He worked. He tried. But the feeling of lack lived in him like a constant companion. He would look at his wallet and feel fear. He would look at a bill and feel defeat. He would hear of someone prospering and feel envy. He was not a wicked man. He was simply living in a state, and the state was speaking louder than any prayer. I asked him to stop making money his master and start making feeling his guide. I asked him, at night, to enter a short scene that implied the end. He imagined sitting at his table, not counting coins, not worrying, but feeling relief. He imagined paying what needed to be paid with ease. He imagined hearing a friend say, things have really turned around for you, and he let the mood of relief become his possession. He did not try to act rich in the world. He did not go spending foolishly. He simply began to feel supplied. He began to feel that life was for him, not against him. And then, through a bridge of ordinary events, opportunities appeared. A better position opened. A partnership formed. A door he did not plan for swung wide. Again the world would say, you got lucky. But the luck was only the name given to the law by those who do not see the inner cause. And I have seen the same in matters of health. A man may be told by physicians that his condition is fixed. He may be surrounded by the evidence of the senses. And yet, if he can enter the feeling of wholeness, if he can accept the mood of being well, his body, obedient to consciousness, begins to reflect it. Not by strain, not by fear, not by frantic effort, but by the quiet acceptance of a new state. Now understand me. I am not asking you to deny what your senses report in panic. I am asking you to stop taking the report as final. The senses are messengers of past assumptions. They are the echo, not the voice. Feeling is the voice. So how do you reach the feeling? Do not try to force emotion. Do not try to whip yourself into belief. Instead, do what you already do every night without knowing it. You enter a state akin to sleep. There is a moment, every night, and even in the drowsy hours of a quiet afternoon, when the body relaxes and the mind grows still. You are not fully awake, and you are not yet asleep. In that interval, the door to the subconscious stands open, and whatever you allow yourself to feel as true in that state sinks in deeply, effortlessly. This is not a method in the modern sense. It is simply the natural gate through which impressions pass. In that drowsy ease, you do not argue so much. You do not resist so fiercely. You receive. So I ask you, when you come to that soft borderland, Do not drift into old worries. Do not rehearse the day's disappointments. Do not replay the scene of lack and call it realism. Use that sacred interval wisely. Let the end be the last thing you touch inwardly. If you desire wealth, do not fall asleep feeling yourself struggling toward wealth. Fall asleep feeling yourself already relieved, already secure, already free. If you desire love, do not fall asleep feeling the ache of absence. Fall asleep feeling the warmth of presence. If you desire success, do not fall asleep feeling behind. Fall asleep feeling accomplished. And if you are using the lottery ticket as a symbol, if you insist on that symbol, then do not make the ticket your God. Make it your reminder. The reminder of what you will accept inwardly. You do not need a complicated scene. The subconscious loves simplicity. Choose one short imaginal act that implies the wish is fulfilled. Keep it brief. Keep it vivid. Repeat it gently until the feeling becomes real. Imagine a friend clasping your shoulder and saying, "You did it." Imagine yourself holding a bank statement and feeling the quiet shock of relief. Imagine signing your name where you used to hesitate, feeling the ease of one who has more than enough. And the most important part is not the picture. It is the feeling the picture awakens. If the picture leaves you cold, change it. If the picture leaves you cold, change it. If the picture feels strained, simplify it. If the picture makes you tense, soften it. You are not performing for anyone. You are impressing your own depth. At first, you may find your old feeling rises up in protest. You may imagine success and immediately feel a sting of disbelief. That is not failure. That is simply the old state trying to survive. Do not fight it. Do not argue with it. Return again to the desired feeling, gently, as one returns to a melody. The subconscious is persuaded by repetition in feeling, not repetition in words. Each night you return to the same end, the same mood, the same quiet ownership. You are feeding a new identity, and identities harden into facts. Do you see now why one felt affirmation is mightier than 1,000 empty ones? Because a felt affirmation is not a sentence. It is an acceptance. It is an inward yes. It is a seed planted in living soil. 1,000 empty ones are seeds held in the hand, never sown. Now let me bring this into a sentence you can remember. A sentence that will keep you honest with yourself. Do not ask, "Did I say the words?" Ask instead, "Did I feel it as true?" Because the subconscious will answer only that second question. If you felt yourself to be the one who always loses, then loss will follow you, even if your lips say otherwise. If you felt yourself to be the one who is favored, supplied, chosen, then life will reflect that in forms you could not predict. So tonight, when you come to that quiet, sleepy threshold, do not make your prayer a performance. Make it an acceptance. Let your inner world become so real that the outer has no choice but to echo it. And remember, the aim is not excitement. The aim is naturalness. The aim is the simple feeling, "This is mine." The aim is the quiet certainty, "It is done." When you can enter that mood, even briefly, you have touched the creative power. And once touched, it will not let you go, provided you do not return to the old feeling as your home. Now, as we move forward, I will take you into a deeper distinction, one that will free you from the habit of speaking in the future, from the language of "I will" and "one day." For the moment you learn to speak from the end, you will stop praying as a beggar and start declaring as one who knows. And that is where true creation begins. Now we must remove from your speech the most dangerous word of all. It sounds harmless. It sounds reasonable. It sounds patient. And yet, it is the very word that keeps men wandering forever on the edge of their desire without ever entering it. That word is will. I will be rich. I will be free. I will win. These sentences appear hopeful, but they are confessions of absence. They declare, calmly and politely, "I am not that now," and the subconscious, which lives only in the present moment, accepts that declaration and says, "Very well, you are not." This is why I say that the future is the enemy of creation. The future is where men place their desires, so they do not have to claim them now. The future is a polite prison. To speak of something is to stand outside it. To speak from something is to stand within it. And the law responds only to where you stand. When a man says, "I will be rich," He is speaking of wealth. He is pointing toward it as something distant, something approaching, something not yet possessed. His feeling is anticipation. His posture is waiting. When a man says, I am rich, he is speaking from wealth. He is not describing a hope. He is declaring a state. His feeling is ownership. His posture is rest. The difference between these two statements is not grammar. It is identity. The first says, I am a man who lacks and hopes to change. The second says, I am a man whose nature is abundance. And nature does not wait for permission to express itself. This is why I tell you, listen to this carefully, and do not soften it in your mind. You are not lying when you speak from the end. You are telling the only truth. The lie is to say, I am poor, when you are infinite being. The lie is to say, I am unlucky, when consciousness itself is your source. The lie is to bow to appearances and call them final. When you speak from the end, you are not denying reality. You are denying the shadow in favor of the substance. Now let me return calmly, simply, to Barbados. Not as a tale of wonder, but as a demonstration of this principle. When I desired to go to Barbados, I did not say, I will go. Had I said that, I would have remained in New York, waiting. I did not say, I hope to go. Hope would have kept me longing. I did not say, I am trying to go. Trying would have kept me struggling. I accepted one statement and one only. I am in Barbados. Not I will be. Not I am going. I am. I slept in that assumption. I walked in it inwardly. I felt it as a present fact. I did not ask how. I did not ask when. I did not argue with the lack of money. I did not negotiate with circumstances. And because I spoke from the end rearranged the means. The bridge appeared after the assumption, not before it. This is the part men resist. They want the bridge first. They want reassurance. They want signs. They want evidence before they dare to claim. But evidence follows assumption. It never precedes it. So when you say, I will be rich when I see the money, you are waiting for the effect to give birth to the cause. And that cannot happen. The cause must come first. Now let us bring this gently but firmly back to the ticket, because many misunderstand here. The ticket has no power. It never did. It never will. The ticket is a symbol, a piece of paper, a mirror, a stage upon which your state is reflected. When a man holds the ticket and says, I will win, he is confessing uncertainty. He is placing power in the future. He is making the numbers his authority. When a man holds the ticket and says inwardly, I am the winner, he is not speaking to the ticket. He is speaking to himself. He is naming his state, and the world does not move for paper, it moves for states. This is why I say the lottery is not played outside, it is played within. The drawing does not decide you, you decide the drawing by the state you occupy long before any numbers appear. Now do not twist this into superstition. Do not imagine I am telling you to command the universe with bravado. That is not speaking from the end, that is effort, that is noise. Speaking from the end is quiet. It is calm. It is settled. It feels like memory, not imagination. It feels like fact, not fantasy. A man who truly speaks from the end does not argue. He does not convince. He does not explain. He simply is. And because he is, the world must comply. Now listen to this sentence and let it settle deeply into you, because it is a knife that cuts through years of confusion. You are not lying when you speak from the end. You are telling the only truth. The senses lie constantly. They report only what has already been assumed. They show you yesterday's thinking, dressed as today's facts. Imagination tells the truth, because imagination is the cause. So when the senses say, you are not rich, and imagination says, I am rich, imagination is not contradicting truth. It is contradicting a shadow, and shadows have no authority. Now ask yourself, gently but honestly, how often have you spoken of your desire instead of from it? How often have you said, someday, instead of now? How often have you postponed your identity to protect yourself from disappointment? Every time you do that, you remain outside the state. But the moment you dare, even quietly, to speak from the end, you step into it. And once you are in it, the law has no choice. So I tell you now, remove I will from your vocabulary. where your desire is concerned. Replace it with I am, not shouted, not strained, not defended, simply accepted. If you want wealth, do not say, I will be wealthy. Say inwardly with feeling, I am wealthy. If you want freedom, do not say, I will be free. Say inwardly, I am free. If you want victory, do not say, I hope I win. Say inwardly, I am the winner. And then rest. Rest as one rests in a chair already sat upon. Rest as one rests in a home already owned. Do not watch the clock. Do not watch the numbers. Do not watch the world. The world will watch you, and it will rearrange itself accordingly. Now we must turn our attention to a danger, so subtle that most never notice it, and yet so powerful that it quietly undoes the finest assumption without a sound. I speak of contradictory language, the careless word, the half-joke, the habitual complaint that slips past your awareness and plants seeds you never intended to sow. Men imagine that only their formal prayers matter. They imagine that only their serious moments carry weight. But the subconscious does not distinguish between a joke and a decree, between a casual remark and a solemn vow. It does not ask, did he mean this? It asks only, was this accepted as true, even for a moment? And because of this, the tongue becomes either your greatest ally or your most faithful saboteur. Consider how often a man will say, laughing, with my luck, that would never happen. He smiles as he says it. He thinks it harmless. He thinks humor softens it. But humor does not cancel feeling. In fact, humor often allows a belief to pass more easily into acceptance because it lowers the guard of awareness. The subconscious hears only this, I am unlucky, and it says, quietly and faithfully, so be it. Another says, I always lose when something small goes wrong. He says it lightly, as though describing the weather. But in saying always, he is defining an identity. He is not talking about an event. He is talking about himself. And identity is the deepest assumption of all. Now let me tell you something plainly, because you must not misunderstand this. The subconscious is not offended by contradiction. It is obedient to it. If you say one thing in a formal moment and then contradict it 10 times in casual moments, it will accept the casual repetition as your true state, because repetition breeds naturalness. This is why a single careless sentence can undo a night of imaginal work, not because the law is cruel, but because the law responds to what is most natural to you. So we must speak of the mental diet, not as a discipline of strain, but as an act of self-respect. When you eat carelessly, the body reflects it. When you speak carelessly, the mind reflects it. And the world, which is the mind made visible, reflects it in turn. You would not drink poison and then complain that medicine does not work. Yet men speak poison inwardly and then wonder why their assumptions bear bitter fruit. Now let me show you how contradictory language appears in daily life, because it is rarely dramatic. It is ordinary. It hides in familiarity. A man says, I am wealthy in a quiet moment. Then later, when faced with a small expense, he mutters, this always drains me. That mutter is more powerful than the earlier declaration, because it is spoken from habit. A woman imagines being chosen and cherished at night. Then, during the day, she says, I'm always the one overlooked. She does not shout it. She does not emphasize it. She simply accepts it as fact. And the subconscious accepts it as law. Another says, I am the winner, inwardly, and then jokes with a friend. If I won, it would be a miracle. You see the contradiction? He places the desired outcome outside the realm of normal life. He labels it extraordinary, and by doing so, he declares that it does not belong to him naturally. The subconscious hears, this is not my world, and it obeys. Now I want you to hear this next sentence very carefully, because it will save you from unnecessary struggle. The law does not require perfection. It requires consistency. You do not need to watch every word with fear. Fear itself is a state, and it creates what it fears. What you need is awareness and return. When you catch yourself speaking against your assumption, do not scold yourself. Do not say, I have ruined everything. That too would be a decree. Simply stop. Withdraw your consent. Replace the statement gently with the one that aligns with the state you choose. If you catch yourself saying, I never win, pause and say inwardly, "That is not my claim," and then rest again in the feeling of the end. This is not about policing speech outwardly to impress others. It is about guarding the inner gate. It is about refusing to feed the old state. Now let me give you a story, not as proof to convince you, but as illustration to clarify. A man once came to me who had struggled all his life with money. He was not foolish. He worked, he saved. But every attempt seemed to collapse. He had learned the law intellectually and had begun imagining prosperity at night. Yet months passed with little change. When I spoke with him, I noticed something. In conversation, he constantly used phrases like, "Money always slips through my fingers, and I'm just not good with finances." He said them without bitterness, almost affectionately, as though describing an old friend. I asked him to do one thing, and one thing only, for 30 days. Watch his language. Not to affirm constantly, not to force positivity, but simply to refuse those old phrases. Each time they rose, he was to replace them with silence or with a neutral truth. He did not change his imaginal work. He did not add techniques. He only stopped reinforcing the old identity. Within weeks, opportunities began to appear. Small at first, then larger. Not by magic, but by alignment. He had stopped feeding the state that was producing lack. The world, no longer receiving that command, began to reorganize. Another woman I knew had long considered herself unlucky in relationships. She would say, jokingly, "Men always leave," or "I'm just not the one they stay for." She laughed when she said it, but she felt it. When she learned to watch her speech, she realized how often she rehearsed abandonment aloud. She did not immediately affirm love. She simply stopped declaring loss. She stopped telling the old story. And in stopping, something remarkable happened. She began to feel different, lighter, less braced for disappointment. And that change of feeling altered how she moved, how she listened, how she responded. The relationship that followed did not arrive as a miracle. It arrived as a natural consequence of a new state. Now understand this, contradictory language does not sabotage, because the universe is petty. It sabotages because language reflects state, and state is cause. So when you joke about being unlucky, you are not insulting fate. You are naming yourself. When you complain about always losing, you are not describing history. You are programming tomorrow. This is why I say, the mental diet is not moral discipline. It is creative hygiene. You would not plant weeds and expect roses. You would not water poison and expect health. So do not speak defeat and expect victory. Now I want to bring this back once more to the ticket, because the ticket reveals this habit with ruthless clarity. How many times have you heard someone say, "With my luck, it won't work," as they buy it? How many times have you said it yourself? Do you see how that sentence destroys the assumption before it is even formed? The ticket becomes a confirmation of an identity already declared. So if you choose to assume the end, if you choose to speak from the end, you must also choose to stop contradicting yourself in the margins. This does not mean you become silent. It means you become deliberate. You speak from identity, not from habit. You speak from acceptance, not from fear. And when the old phrases rise, as they will at first, you treat them like echoes. They are the remnants of a former state. They have no power unless you consent to them again. Now let me give you a simple rule that you can carry with you without effort. If a sentence weakens the feeling of your fulfilled state, do not entertain it. That is all. You do not need to argue with it. You do not need to analyze it. You do not need to fight it. Simply do not feed it. Return to the feeling of the end. Return to the quiet knowing. Return to the identity you have chosen. Because the law does not ask for your perfection. It asks for your loyalty. Loyalty to the state. Loyalty to the assumption. Loyalty to the inner truth you have claimed. And as you practice this, something subtle but profound happens. The old jokes stop arising. The complaints lose their appeal. The language of defeat begins to sound foreign, as though it belonged to another person. And that is the sign you are changing. Not because you are forcing words, but because your identity is shifting. And when identity shifts, the world has no choice but to follow. In the next movement, I will show you how persistence and naturalness complete this process. How the assumption once maintained ceases to feel imagined and begins to feel remembered. But for now, let this be clear in you. Your words are not harmless. They are not decorative. They are the outer edge of your state. And if you would create deliberately, you must speak deliberately, especially when you think it does not matter. Now we come to a point where many, even after understanding the law, quietly turn back. Not because they doubt it, but because they grow impatient with it. They ask, how long? They ask, why has it not appeared yet? And in asking, they reveal that the state they occupy is still one of waiting, not of being. So I must speak to you of persistence, and more importantly, of naturalness. Persistence is not effort. It is not strain. It is not strain. It is not forcing the mind to repeat a scene endlessly. Persistence is loyalty to a state. It is remaining faithful to an assumption, even when the outer world offers no immediate applause. And naturalness is the sign that persistence has done its work. You see, every state feels strange at first. If it did not, you would already be living it. The unfamiliarity you feel when you first assume wealth, health, or victory is not evidence of falsehood. It is evidence of transition. When a man marries, the first days feel different. He may still reach for habits that belonged to his former life. He may still think as a single man thinks, but he does not conclude from this that the marriage is unreal. He persists in the role, and gradually, without effort, the role becomes identity. One day he wakes up and realizes he no longer thinks of himself as unmarried. The idea feels absurd, not because he repeats, I am married, but because the state has become natural. So it is with every assumption. When you first say, I am wealthy, it may feel like imagination. When you first feel yourself already the winner, it may feel like a scene you are creating. But if you persist gently, without anxiety, something subtle happens. The effort drops away. You no longer do the assumption. You are it. This is the moment many misunderstand. They think persistence means intensity. They think they must feel excitement every night, conviction every moment. But excitement is not the goal. Naturalness is. The seed does not shout as it grows beneath the soil. It rests. And because it rests, it grows. So I tell you, if your assumption feels forced, you are trying too hard. If it feels tense, you are still looking for proof. Return instead to simplicity. Return to the feeling of ease. Ask yourself, how would I feel if this were already settled? Not thrilled, not ecstatic, settled. That feeling of course, is the feeling of naturalness. Let me give you an example from health, because it reveals this principle clearly. A man who is ill thinks constantly about his body. Every sensation demands attention. Every symptom is examined. But when he is healthy, he does not affirm health. He does not check his pulse in gratitude. He simply lives. Health feels unremarkable when it is natural. Wealth is the same. The man who truly feels wealthy does not think about money all day. He pays a bill without emotion. He makes choices without fear. Abundance expresses itself as calm. So if you are still watching the clock, counting days, scanning the world for signs, do not condemn yourself. Simply recognize that the state has not yet become natural, and that is not failure. It is a stage. Persistence means you do not abandon the assumption just because it has not yet become boring. Yes, boring, for that is the sign. When the imaginal act no longer excites you, when it no longer feels like something you are doing, when it feels almost dull, you are very near the harvest, because the subconscious has accepted it. I have seen this countless times. People come to me and say, Neville, I no longer feel the thrill I once felt. Have I lost it? And I smile, because they have not lost it. They have moved into it. The thrill belongs to desire. Naturalness belongs to possession. Think again of marriage. The wedding day may be filled with emotion, but the life that follows is quiet, and it is that quiet that proves the reality of the union. Now let me speak of the moment you asked about. The moment when imagining becomes remembering. This is a sacred moment, and it cannot be forced. At first you imagine the scene. You construct it. You repeat it. It feels deliberate. Then, one night, perhaps unexpectedly, the scene returns to you on its own. you are not trying, you are drifting. And suddenly, it is there, effortlessly, like a memory. You do not say, I am imagining. You say, yes, of course. That is the transition. The subconscious has accepted the scene as fact. It no longer resists, it no longer questions, it treats it as something that has already happened. And from that moment, the outer world must follow. Not because you demand it, but because there is no other option. Now hear this carefully, because it will protect you from unnecessary disappointment. The outer world may still lag behind. Naturalness within does not always mean immediate manifestation without, but it does mean inevitability. Once a state feels natural, it cannot be undone unless you deliberately abandon it. Doubt alone will not remove it. Delay will not remove it. Even contradiction in the outer world will not remove it. Why? Because you no longer react. Reaction belongs to the one who is still hoping. The one who knows does not react. This is why persistence is not repeating words. It is refusing to go back to the old identity. You may have days where nothing seems to move. That is not a test. It is a settling. You may have moments where the old self tries to speak again. That is not failure. It is habit dying. Do not dig up the seed to check if it is growing. Leave it. And if you ask me, how long must I persist? I answer, until it feels natural, not until something happens, not until a number appears, not until proof arrives, until it feels like you would be lying to deny it. That is the measure. Now let me speak again to the ticket, because it is a useful symbol here. When a man buys a ticket as a game, he watches it nervously. He checks numbers with tension. He feels suspense. When a man buys a ticket as an expression of a state already assumed, the ticket loses importance. It becomes incidental. He may even forget about it. And paradoxically, that forgetting is not neglect. It is faith. Faith is not excitement. Faith is rest. So if you find yourself growing calm, less interested, less anxious, do not think you have lost focus. You have gained identity. And identity does not shout. It simply is. In the next movement, I will show you how to ignore appearances without effort. How to see the outer world as a delayed echo rather than a verdict. But for now, let this settle in you. Do not measure your success by intensity. Measure it by naturalness. When the assumption feels like who you are, not something you are trying to be, the work is done. And what remains is only time catching up with truth. Now we arrive at a discipline that separates those who merely hear this law from those who live by it. It is the art of ignoring facts. This sounds dangerous to the natural man. He has been trained to worship facts, to bow before appearances, to call the visible world reality. But I tell you, the facts you see are not reality. They are only the evidence of past assumptions. What you call the 3D world is a shadow, and no man changes a shadow by fighting it. He changes the object that casts it. The world is a screen upon which consciousness projects itself. The picture may disturb you, frighten you, or tempt you to react. But reacting to the screen does nothing to the projector. This is why I insist, do not react. Reaction is agreement. When you react to lack, you accept lack as real. When you react to delay, you accept delay as law. When you react to loss, you accept loss as identity. But the awakened man understands that facts are the last thing to move, not the first. Think of it this way. If you speak a word into an empty hall, the echo comes after. You do not shout again because the echo has not yet returned. You wait, knowing the echo must come. To shout again in impatience would only create confusion. So it is with life. The outer world is the echo. Your assumption is the voice. When the echo seems delayed, it is not denial, it is distance. And distance collapses when you stop measuring it. This is why I say to you, do not argue with facts. Do not fight them. Do not explain them. Simply withdraw your belief from them. Facts demand attention. They demand reaction. They provoke emotion. And emotion is agreement. So when the bank balance shows lack, look at it without feeling. Say inwardly, this is a shadow, nothing more. When the ticket does not win, do not curse it. Do not lament. Do not say, it didn't work. Simply say, this too is part of the unfolding. Because it may be. Many abandon the law at the very moment it is working most efficiently. They assume a state, they feel it real, and then life rearranges itself. But rearrangement looks like disorder before it looks like fulfillment. The bridge does not announce itself as a bridge. It looks like movement. It looks like delay. It looks like detour. I have seen men declare failure because the first outcome contradicted their desire, only to discover later that that very contradiction was necessary to bring the greater fulfillment. Let me give you a simple example. A man imagines himself in a new position. He feels it natural. Days later, he is dismissed from his current role. The senses scream, failure. Fear rises. He reacts. And in reacting, he abandons the state. But had he persisted, he would have seen that the dismissal was not rejection. It was clearance. The bridge required the old to dissolve before the new could appear. This happens often with money. A man assumes wealth. Soon after, an unexpected expense appears. The old self panics and says, "See, it's getting worse." But the wise man knows that movement often begins with exposure. The subconscious rearranges. Accounts close. Paths end. Spaces open. Do not judge the middle. Never judge a work in progress. This is why I warn you against measuring success by immediate outcomes. The law is not instant gratification. It is inevitable fulfillment. So when something appears to go wrong, do not label it. Do not interpret it. Do not explain it. Remain in the state. Say inwardly, "I know who I am." That is all. Persisting in the state does not mean ignoring practical action. It means acting without fear. It means doing what must be done outwardly while refusing to let the outer world define you inwardly. The man who knows he is wealthy pays a bill differently than the man who believes he is poor. The action may look the same. The feeling is not. And feeling is the only thing that matters. I remember a woman who came to me convinced she had failed. She had imagined financial freedom. She had felt it real. And then, suddenly, her situation seemed to worsen. More bills arrived, delays occurred. She said, "Neville, it's not working." I asked her one question. "How do you feel now?" She said, "Afraid." I told her, "Then you have changed states. The fear is the cause. The facts are the effect." She returned to the feeling of already being secure, not hopeful, secure. Within weeks, the situation reversed completely. What had looked like failure was only a clearing of old arrangements. The world must obey your state, but it may first dismantle what contradicts it. So I say to you, when the outer world shouts, lower your inner voice, not raise it. Do not fight shadows. Do not argue with echoes. Do not panic when the stagehands move the scenery. Remain who you are. This is the true meaning of ignoring facts. It is not denial. It is mastery. The facts you see today were born yesterday. The facts you will see tomorrow are being born now. And what is being born now is decided by the state you occupy. So if you persist in the state of already having, already being, already winning, the facts must bend. They have no choice. They are obedient servants. In the next movement, I will show you how this obedience unfolds as a bridge of incidents, why nothing is wasted, why even losing tickets have meaning, and why the law never misses. But for now, remember this: the world is a mirror. Do not polish the mirror. Change your face. Now let us speak of something that confuses many and liberates only a few: the bridge of incidents. Once you have assumed the end, once you have accepted a state as true within yourself, life must reorganize itself to reflect that state. But it does not do so in a straight line that satisfies the intellect. It does not consult your reason. It does not ask for your approval. The bridge of incidents is the natural sequence of events that carries you from the moment of assumption to the moment of fulfillment. You do not design this bridge. You do not select its steps. You do not know in advance what it will look like. And this is precisely why men doubt. They expect the bridge to look like success from the very first step. But bridges often begin with what appears to be loss. The moment you assume a new state, the old state must begin to dissolve. And dissolution can feel like failure to the man who judges by appearances. This is where so many abandon the law. They imagine wealth, and then something is taken away. They imagine success, and then a door closes. They imagine freedom, and then responsibility increases. And they say, "I was wrong." But they were not wrong. They were early. The bridge always unfolds in a way that is natural to the world of Caesar, not to the world of imagination. It uses people, circumstances, delays, rearrangements, and sometimes even disappointments, to bring about the assumed end. In Scripture, Joseph did not go from dreamer to ruler in one step. He was sold, imprisoned, forgotten, and yet every step was part of the same bridge. Had any one step been removed, the end could not have occurred. To the senses, Joseph's life looked like failure after failure. To the law, it was perfect continuity. So it is with you. When a ticket does not win, do not call it a mistake. Do not label it a failure. Do not assume the law has failed you. Ask yourself only one question. Did I change my state? If the answer is no, then nothing has gone wrong. The bridge may require repetition. The bridge may require patience. The bridge may require movement. You do not yet understand, but it never contradicts the end. The law never leads you away from what you have assumed. It only appears to do so to the man who insists on judging the middle. I remember a man who assumed financial independence. Shortly afterward, he lost his employment. Everything in him wanted to say, "This is ruin," but he persisted in the feeling of already being secure. Within months, what had appeared as loss revealed itself as release. He entered a new line of work that brought him more freedom than he had ever known. Had he judged the bridge at its first step, he would have turned back. This is why I say, never interpret events while they are happening. Let life move, let the bridge unfold. Do not interfere by fear. The bridge of incidents is not controlled by effort. It is governed by law, and law is exact. You cannot hasten it by anxiety. You cannot improve it by doubt. You cannot redirect it by complaint. You can only remain faithful to the state you have assumed. The man who assumes wealth and then watches every dollar with fear is no longer in the state of wealth. He has stepped off the bridge. The man who assumes victory and then curses every apparent loss has abandoned the end. But the one who remains inwardly unchanged, while the outer world rearranges itself, will always reach the destination. So I tell you plainly, the losing ticket may not be a loss at all. It may be removing an attachment. It may be delaying a fulfillment for a larger alignment. It may be part of a sequence that only makes sense when viewed from the end. The law does not waste movement. Nothing that happens after an assumption is accidental. If you remain in the state, everything that happens serves it. And one day, often suddenly, often quietly, the end appears. Not as a miracle, but as something that feels inevitable. You will look back and see that every step, even the ones that frightened you, even the ones that disappointed you, were necessary, and you will say, it could not have happened any other way. This is the bridge of incidents. Walk it without fear. Judge nothing. Remain who you are. The end is already decided. Now we come to a gift so merciful, so powerful, that when it is truly understood, the weight of years can fall away in a single night. I speak of revision. Most men believe the past is fixed. They believe it is stone, immovable, final. They believe yesterday holds authority over today and tomorrow. And because they believe this, they remain bound by memories that no longer exist, except in consciousness. But I tell you plainly, the past is not a fact. It is a state, and states can be changed. Nothing you remember has power except the feeling you continue to give it. A lost ticket does not hurt you. A remembered loss hurts you. A defeat does not limit you. The emotional acceptance of defeat limits you. Every time you recall a losing ticket and feel disappointment, you are not remembering, you are recreating. You are re-impressing the subconscious with the same assumption of loss, and the law, faithful as always, continues to reproduce it. This is why men repeat patterns. Not because fate is cruel, but because memory is active. Revision is the act of changing the memory, not intellectually, but emotionally. You do not argue with the past. You do not analyze it. You do not explain it away. You simply reimagine it. Let me be clear. Revision is not pretending that something did not happen. It is recognizing that what happened was never the cause. The feeling was. And feeling can be changed. So take one of your lost tickets, not physically, but in imagination. Close your eyes and return to that moment. See yourself holding it. Feel the disappointment as you did then, only for a moment, and then change it. See the numbers match. Hear your own voice, react, differently. Feel the surge of relief, the quiet joy, the sense of course. Let the scene change completely until the old feeling dissolves and a new one replaces it. Do not rush this. Do not force it. Let the new feeling become dominant. You are not correcting the paper, you are correcting the impression. The subconscious does not know which scene is real, it only knows which feeling is accepted. And once the revised feeling is accepted, the past loses its authority. This is not theory. I have seen lives transformed by this simple act. I knew a man who lived under the weight of repeated failure. Each memory confirmed his belief that he was unlucky. I taught him revision. Each night he took one memory and altered it. Not the facts, but the outcome. He imagined success where there was loss, approval where there was rejection, calm where there was fear. Within weeks, his outer life changed. Not because the past was altered in time, but because it was altered in consciousness. And consciousness is the only cause. The law does not care when something happened. It only cares what is being felt now. This is why revision works. When you revise, you are not changing history. You are changing the state from which history continues to flow. Now hear this carefully. Revision is most powerful when done before sleep. Sleep is the great gate. It is the moment when the conscious mind releases its grip and the subconscious receives without resistance. Whatever you feel as true as you drift into sleep is accepted as fact. So I urge you, do not fall asleep rehearsing loss. Do not sleep in regret. Do not relive disappointment. Instead, revise. Take the scene that troubles you most and rewrite it until the emotional tone is changed, until relief replaces tension, until confidence replaces shame, until victory replaces loss. Then sleep. Sleep knowing that the revised scene has been accepted. Sleep knowing that you have planted a new seed. And understand this, once a memory is revised emotionally, the future rearranges itself accordingly. You may never see the old pattern again. The law has no reason to repeat it. Revision frees you from the past because it removes the cause. And when the cause is removed, the effect disappears. So tonight, before you sleep, revise at least one loss. Do not do it to get something. Do it to become free. For the man who is free of his past is free to receive anything. And when you awaken tomorrow, you may not notice a dramatic change, but something subtle will be different. The weight will be lighter. The expectation will shift. The state will loosen. And from that loosened state, new events must come. The past has no power over you. Only the feeling you accept now does. Change that feeling, and the past is finished. Now we come to the moment everything has been quietly pointing toward. Not a new idea, not a technique, not a ritual, but a recognition, a remembering. Something you have spoken all your life without knowing what you were saying. The 3 words. They are not hidden in mystery. They are not coded in symbols. They are not locked away in ancient language. They are the most familiar words you know. I am. When Moses stood before the burning bush and asked the voice, "Who shall I say sent me?" the answer was not a name as men give names. It was not a title. It was not a description. It was I am. Not I was. Not I will be. I am. This is not poetry. This is not metaphor. This is identity. I am is the name of God. And I tell you now, God is not outside you. He never was. The voice did not say, God has sent me. It said, I am hath sent me. The name is consciousness itself, awareness of being. Every time you say I am, you are invoking the creative power that forms worlds. Whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you use it wisely or carelessly. This is why the commandment says, Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. It was never about profanity. It was never about speech alone. It was about identity. To say I am, followed by something unworthy, is to clothe the divine name in limitation. To say I am unlucky, I am poor, I am always losing, is to take the name in vain, and the law impartial and exact must bring forth what you have declared. The law does not judge. It does not forgive. It does not argue. It says only, so be it. But now you know. And knowing changes everything. When you say I am, you are not describing a condition. You are defining a state. You are issuing a decree. I am is not a hope. I am is not a wish. I am is a command. The world you see is nothing more than the echo of your I ams. Look at your life honestly and you will see it. Every recurring pattern, every repeated outcome, every familiar disappointment or triumph, all of it flows from what you have quietly been saying you are. Now bring this understanding to the ticket. The ticket has never had power. The numbers have never decided anything. Chance has never existed. The ticket is only a mirror. When you touch it as one who says, I am unlucky, it must reflect loss. When you touch it as one who says, I am chosen, it must reflect victory. Before you buy it, before you scratch it, before you look at it, you decide who you are. Do not say the words lightly. Do not whisper them in doubt. Do not repeat them in fear. Withdraw into yourself. Feel the end, accept the state, and then speak. I am the winner. Not because the ticket deserves it, not because the odds allow it, but because I am has spoken. And I am is the only cause. You are not asking the world to change. You are declaring what is, and the world must obey. This is why I told you from the beginning, the lottery is not played outside. It is won before it ever appears. It is won in consciousness. When you say I am with feeling, with acceptance, with calm certainty, you have already shifted reality at its root. The rest is only a shadow catching up. So let this be what you carry with you. Not excitement, not urgency, not desperation, but knowing. Knowing that every time you say I am, you are shaping tomorrow. Knowing that nothing can resist an assumption accepted as fact. Knowing that you are not a beggar in a world of chance, but the operant power in a world of law. Say the words wisely, say them reverently, say them only from the end, and then rest. For once I am has spoken, there is nothing left to do. Now we come to the end of this instruction, and I want you to notice something before I say another word. If you are still with me, it is not by accident. This teaching does not hold those who are merely curious. It holds those who are ready. Ready not to hope, but to assume. Ready not to beg, but to know. Ready not to chase, but to awaken. So listen now, quietly, carefully, without hurry. When the moment comes that you decide to buy a ticket, do not rush. Do not act from excitement. Do not act from fear. Do not act from the old habit of hoping something outside yourself will save you. Pause. Withdraw your attention from the world for a moment and turn inward. Do not speak yet. First feel. Ask yourself, if this were already done, if the outcome were already secured, how would I feel right now? Not excited, not tense, not desperate, relieved, calm, certain. Let that feeling rise gently. Do not force it. Do not dramatize it. Simply allow yourself to rest in the quiet, knowing of possession, as though something heavy has been set down, and there is nothing left to worry about. When that feeling becomes clear, even faintly, then speak. Not loudly, not repeatedly, not with urgency. Simply say, within yourself or softly aloud, I am the winner. Say it once as a statement of fact, not as a plea. Then stop. Do not repeat it compulsively. Do not watch the ticket anxiously. Do not check for signs. Do not bargain with life. Rest. Rest as the man rests who has already received. This resting is not indifference. It is faith. It is the quiet confidence that the seed has been planted, and that nature will do what it always does. You do not dig up the seed to see if it is growing. You do not stand over the soil in worry. You go about your life knowing that growth is taking place beneath the surface. This is how the law works. Feeling first, word second. Rest always. If you feel the urge to watch, to doubt, to question, return inward, not outward. Return to the feeling, not the numbers. Return to the state, not the shadow. And remember, the ticket is not the cause. It never was. You are. Now let me leave you with this. The true purpose of this teaching is not the ticket. The ticket is only a doorway. What matters is that you have seen, perhaps for the first time, that you are not a victim of chance. You are not waiting on fate. You are not hoping to be chosen by something outside yourself. You are the operant power. Your imagination is not fantasy. It is creative law. And the moment you truly know this, something changes forever. Even if you never buy another ticket, You are no longer the same man or woman who entered this teaching, because now you know that every circumstance is an echo. Every outcome is obedient. Every tomorrow is formed by what you accept as true today. And beyond money, beyond tickets, beyond numbers, there is a greater wealth, the awakening to who you are. When that awakening comes, the world becomes generous, not because it has changed, but because you have. So do not rush away from this knowledge. Do not speak of it carelessly. Do not argue about it. Live it. And if you wish to go deeper, if you wish to learn the single imaginal act I return to again and again, the one simple scene that contains within it the secret of all creation, then remain with me. For this is not the end, it is the beginning.